Freedom. Oh, freedom, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me, yeah. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my own grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
This is a living museum of people who are very little known in Dallas, but yet at the same time, they've done great things. And as you approach Black History Month, I would like for you to think of people in your own city. We have a Martin Luther King in our past, right here in Dallas. We've had a Thurgood Marshall. And these people are not very much known, but they've done just as great of things as those people have right here in Dallas. So we want you to be aware of that as you go through your Black History Month. Let's think about the famous and good people that have done great things in our own city, because we've all heard of Martin Luther King, Sojourner Truth, and the list goes on. Our mission today is to bring us back to what we have right here at home. And let's just not keep walking down the same path that they have and not even recognize him. So one of the main focus of Remembering Black Dallas is to remember Black Dallas.
No more weeping, don't you know? No more weeping.
I am J.L. Turner, Sr. I was born on July 3rd, 1869. And that's in Dallas County, in a little town called Inwood, near what you now call Inwood Road. Yeah, that's here in North Dallas. My parents were Mr. B.F. and Mariah Turner, and they came to Texas from Missouri and Kentucky with their slave masters. After emancipation in Texas, in 1865, they managed to purchase land near Inwood Road, and my parents were resourceful people to eventually purchase several acres of land and became quite successful as farmers. And we had several other relatives in our area, and they were also farmers and acquired land in the far northern area of Dallas, what is now called Addison, Carrollton, Plano, Texas. And I was able to attend the local colored school in Dallas County and help my parents with the farm along the way. But I had a desire to continue my education, to rise above just being a farmer, and I realized that this would be a great task for a young Negro boy. As I prepared to go to college, my father's advice to me was simply this, and I quote, he said, "The plow and the mule will be waiting for you when you get back." Now, when I think about the statement today, what was the advice? He was trying to encourage me, or was he trying to frighten me to do my best, or better my plight for a Negro boy? Or was it just his belief that there would be no better plight for me, with an education or without? But I still regret to this day that I didn't think to ask him what he did mean by this statement, but, well, I didn't have to reside back to my old boyhood job. I went on to Wiley College in Marshall, Texas, and then on to New Orleans University, and then later to Kent Law School, and in Chicago. And in Chicago, I received my law degree and my license and practiced there for a couple of years. And I became homesick, and I didn't care for the fast life of Chicago then, and greatly missed my family, my cousins and uncles and aunts. I longed to be near them. But when I returned to Dallas in 1898, I began my law practice at 155 Main Street, right across from the old red courthouse in Dallas, with attorney Joseph E. Wiley, who was already in practice, where we briefly shared an office before he returned to his hometown. Even though I was about the third Negro attorney to practice law here in the city of Dallas, I take pride in saying that I was the first native Dallas Negro lawyer to practice in this city. Yeah, my practice lasted about 50 years, longer than any other Negro lawyer in this city to this day. Later, I shared an office with an outstanding doctor and friend, and second to none, which was Dr. McMillan. Now, by 1910, I married Mrs. Annie Mae Coates. Oh, Lord. And we bought a home, 1921 Allen Street. She was the love of my life. And I was very supportive, and she was very supportive of me and my practice. About 1919, we already had 3 children. 2 girls, Bernadine, the oldest girl, and Minnie, a baby boy named John L. Turner Jr. Life was good, and my practice had become very successful. And even though I practiced both criminal and civil law, I am most noted for my expertise and authority on land titles, which was a major part of my practice. Unfortunately, tragedy struck my family. In May 1919, Klan tension in the Dallas area was very high. There had previously been Klan conventions, rallies, and threats to many Negro people in the area. So many of the Negroes in the area were uneasy, to say the least, with just going to and from work, as well as moving about in our own neighborhood. There was always the fear of being lynched or attacked in our own home. That's right. We all looked out for each other as best as we could. But one night, my wife fell ill and was sleeping in the next room. And I heard a noise. And I saw a shadow in the next room near the window. Startled somewhat, asleep and frightened, I fired a shot at the image that appeared coming to me right through that window. And suddenly, I heard a familiar voice cry out, "Attorney Turner, you have shot me." It was my wife, Annie. And she fell to the floor, man. I ran to her and I began to hear the children crying. I ran to the door to call for Dr. White, who was living next door. And other neighbors came in to assess what had happened. And Dr. White, my neighbor, was the first to arrive, and he immediately began to attend to Annie. And after realizing what I had done, I collapsed. I blacked out. After I was revived, Dr. McMillan, Dr. Armstrong, Dr. Hamilton, Dr. Anderson, Dr. Penn, they had all arrived on the scene and do whatever they could to try to save Annie. She was taken to the hospital. She languished. She languished for weeks in the hospital and was attended to by the best doctors in the area, many who were also my clients, and they were close friends of mine. So. And on Thursday, May 29th, 1999, that day became the darkest day of my life. By Saturday, that same week, just 2 days later, the Dallas Express had published the painful and awful details of the tragic event. And a few weeks later, my lovely wife, Annie Mae, she was gone. And at my own hand. I'm a widow. Single, father. I have children now. They are motherless. Little John is only 2 years old. how can I ever explain to him where his mother is now? Will my girls adjust? How will they adjust without a mother? These questions, they reel through my mind. Eventually, through faith, family, neighbors, many tears, and the support of each other, we eventually were able to move on. We became closer with each other and became a comfort to one another. Awful rumors grew that I intentionally shot my wife to pursue a mistress that I was involved with, which was far from the truth as the East is from the West. I never even remarried, even though I knew the children needed another mother. Up until the time they became adults, I feared, what if something happened to me? My children would become orphans. I understood the loss and pain that they must have suffered from day-to-day living without a mother. But my cousin, Mrs. Jessie T. Davis, and my neighbor, Mrs. Farilla E. White, became a beacon of light and a great support to me and my children. Jessie was only about 10 years old when Bernadine and they often were amused by her takeover bossiness and her sternness when she came around to help. Jessie was a character. I could not wait to get home to hear the stories and the tall tale they had to tell about Jessie for the day. Yes, indeed, she was a character. She made sure that they learned and practiced activities that would make them proper and respectable young men and women. Even though I thought some of the tasks were a little harsh, cleaning and the work she required them to do under her watch, but they managed to endure the task with great stride. And they seemed to adore her. Mrs. Farilla White, who was also a classmate of Cousin Jess, tutored all three of them weekly in science and geography, since the St. Anthony Catholic School, now called Notre Dame, which was across the street where they attended, did not teach these subjects due to religious reasons. But I wanted my children to learn and to be exposed to every possible thing to be successful, second to none in life. After several years, Bernadine followed her cousin Jessie's footsteps and became a teacher right here in Dallas. Minnie married, and Mrs. Minnie Turner Meadows became an outstanding and honored teacher at Texas Southern in Houston, Texas. My namesake and son became Attorney J.L. Turner, Jr. And after returning from service in the U.S. Army, we had an office built on the corner of Root and Flora, across from the Booker T. Washington High School there. There, joint practice began. I think it was around 1945 when we began to practice. It was a great joy to practice with my son till my death, December 5th, 1951. And my son came along with a close friend and colleague of ours, Attorney L.A. Bedford, formed the J.L. Turner Legal Association, which has become one of the longest existing Black Lawyers Association in the nation, which has supported hundreds of aspiring college-bound lawyers in the city of Dallas for over 60 years. I can now rest in peace knowing that I have been a credit to my race and that my legacy through the J.L. Turner Legal Association will continue to be a beacon of hope and light to aspiring future generations of lawyers of all races. It's ironic when you really think about it that the foundation of my success was based on a mule, a plow, the wisdom, love, and support of an uneducated, former enslaved man named Benjamin Franklin Turner. To him, I am forever grateful. Thank you.
I'll be buried in my grave. I'm going home to my Lord.
Now, I was born in a place called Hill County, Alabama. It was named in honor of Confederate officer Stephen Hill. Really, that tells you all you need to know about Hill County, Alabama. The town that I was born in was called Newburgh. It only had 450 people. Now, Newburgh was like a lot of small southern towns at that time. Cotton was king. Now, what did that really mean? What it really meant was black people picked the cotton, white people made the money. That was just the way it was. At 16, I decided I had to get up out of there. I didn't know where I was going to go, but I knew that any place had to be better than Hill County, Alabama. So I arrived in Dallas in 1880. I was 26 years old. And man, this town was booming. Dallas sat right at the intersection of two great railroads, one running north and south, the other east and west. It was the commercial center of this part of the country. There were thousands of people. To a little old country boy like me from Hill County, Alabama, this may as well have been New York City. I was so impressed. But like a lot of black people who arrived at that time, I arrived flat broke. The only thing I could do was hard manual labor. I was a delivery man. I drove a wagon. I was a porter. I did anything I could to earn a buck. 1 year after I came here, in 1881, I met a real pretty girl from over in Grand Prairie, Texas. We got married. Shortly after marriage, we started having kids. And in about 16 years, we had 8 kids. So I really had to work. We had to find a place to settle. The first place we looked at was a place called Frogtown. You know it as the West End. We had options. You know, there were other freedmen's towns around, south of town, Joppy. There were other places out in the White Rock area. But I wanted to be close to the action. I wanted to be close to downtown Dallas. So we ended up settling on Juliet Street in what they call Old North Dallas. Now, the first house we bought, it was only 800 square feet. But we went to work. In 1892, that first grocery store that we bought burned to the ground. It was on Flora Street. We were so disappointed. But we didn't let that stop us. We opened up a bigger grocery store on Juliet Street, right next door to our home. Then we added a pharmacy. In a few years, we had invested in insurance companies, funeral homes. We even opened up a bail bond service company. We started investing in real estate. In 1896, just 16 years after I arrived here, we were paying taxes on property valued at over $1.3 million. And that 800 square foot house on Juliet Street, we were able to add rooms. We turned that into a 13-room Victorian mansion. One of the most beautiful houses in our neighborhood. Yeah, we were doing pretty good. But the cherry on top happened in 1912. Me and my family, we were the first black family in Dallas to own an automobile. A brand new 1912 Cole automobile. Now, people thought we were crazy. They thought we were crazy because most of the streets in Dallas were dirt roads, particularly the ones in the community where we live. But you know what? We didn't care. I had worked hard to make this money, and I was proud to give this automobile to my family. Now, we would dress in our Sunday best and drive up and down these dirt roads. Now, a lot of people were jealous, black people, but the most jealous people were the white people, because very few of them at that time had a car. So they made it a little bit tough, but we just kept going. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Black man get a little money in his pocket, start spending it on frivolous stuff, cars, clothes. Let me tell you something about myself. I always knew the importance of my wealth. And not only did I share it with my family, but I felt an obligation to share it with my community as well. So the greatest debate when I was in my prime, and you guys have heard it, was the debate between Booker T. Washington and W.B. Du Bois. And you know the story, right? Washington believed that you should work hard, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That is, if you had any boots. He also believed that you should be accommodating, not cause trouble. And hopefully one day, the light would shine and the white people would accept you. Now Du Bois, he had a different perspective. He believed in what he called the talented 10, in these brilliant black men that would rise up and through political application, through superior education, through political change, would lift us as a people to heights that we deserve to be. Now, as that debate raged, I saw merit in both sides. As some of you who know me know, I believed in education. And I've sent my grandchildren to some of the best educational institutions in this country, Fisk, Stanford, and so forth. But if you had to put a gun in my head and say, who do you most support? I would have to say Washington. Now, I know some of you are going to criticize me for being an Uncle Tom or being too accommodating by a body with Washington. But let me tell you something. When I got here in 1880, there was no talented 10 to lift anybody up. Dr. Marcellus Cooper had not arrived. The great educator Fannie C. Harris had not set foot as a teacher in Dallas. Mr. J.L. Turner had not started his legal practice. As a matter of fact, every black person that I met when I got here in 1880 was just like me. They had been a slave. That was all they knew. So before you criticize me, walk a little bit in my shoes. But as I was saying, I knew the responsibility that I had as I accumulated wealth. And I felt like I used it to better my community. One of the first things I did was invest in a trade school for my people so that they could be trained to be blacksmiths, carpenters, seamstresses, anything that they needed to do to get some money in their pocket and take care of their families. That's what I believed in. I also invested in a black-operated cotton mill in our own neighborhood. That cotton mill employed over 200 African Americans with paychecks every week so that they could take care of their families. That's what I believed in. Now, I also thought that our people, they needed to be lifted up because we suffered a lot of indignity every day. One of the things that really, really made me angry was the fact that they had that State Fair of Texas over there, and they would limit our participation and attendance to 1 day a year. That wasn't right. So what I did, I got together with some other black people that had a few dollars in their pocket, and we created our own state fair in our community. It was one of the best fairs that you probably never heard of, but we did a good job. I also believed in the spiritual side of my people. I believe that everything I was given, it came from God. Now, there were a lot of black people that did domestic work. And they had to work 7 days a week in some cases. Even on Sundays, some of them had to go and work in the white people's house, prepare breakfast, and then when the whites returned from their morning church service, they would have to be there and prepare and serve them their supper. Now, I knew that people had to work. As I said before, I wanted my people to have some dollars in their pockets. But I also wanted them to continue to grow spiritually. So I invested my money in establishing a church called Evening Chapel. And this church supported those domestics with a full-blown Sunday evening service after they performed their domestic services to the white people that they were employed by. So, don't talk to me about misusing my money buying a car. We deserved it. We earned it. And by God, I was going to give it to my family. Now, I'm going to take my seat, but I'm going to talk to you about something I've been hearing a lot, particularly from my own young people. And that's the fact that you're worried too much about who's against you. Now, I achieved everything that I achieved right here in Dallas, Texas. And at the same time, Dallas has the largest Klan chapter in America at that time. They had 13,000 members in the local Klan chapter. And those Klan members dominated every part of society. For the city of Dallas, the county of Dallas. But you know what? I didn't let that stop me and my family. We pressed on. We used our smarts, our hard work, our intellect. We achieved everything that we achieved in spite of them. So in summary, to the young people, I would say, don't worry about who's against. Doesn't matter. All you got to do is press on.
Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. When God's gonna trouble the water.
Many streets, buildings bear the names of Negroes who have left their mark on Dallas over the years. I, too, am one of them. The Fannie C. Harris Elementary School, located in East Dallas, was named after me. Before 1912, that very school was named the Pacific Avenue Colored School. You see, I am Fannie C. Harris, and I was one of 3 original teachers in the Dallas Colored School number 1, which, if you didn't know, the Dallas Colored School number 1 was the very first public school for Negro children here in Dallas. The Dallas Colored School number 1 began about 4 years after the Dallas School District organized itself in 1884. The Dallas Colored School number 1 started with 7 students in the 8th grade in the school year of 1888, where J.W. Ray was the principal and I, Fannie C. Harris, was one of the teachers. The Dallas Colored School number 1 offered grades of study from grade 1 to grade 11. I was primarily an elementary teacher. So besides teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic, I also taught physical fitness, and music. Now, prior to coming to the Dallas Public School, Colored School number 1, I had taught in Corsicana, Texas. My principal, J.W. Ray, he had taught at private church-run schools in the Plano, Texas area and in the White Rock area of Dallas. Prior to the organization of Dallas Colored School number 1, many parents in Dallas sent their children to Corsicana for education. And why, you might ask? Well, because Corsicana is about 50 miles down the road, but Corsicana had a public school for Negro children. And the school was a brick building with many dedicated teachers like me, Fannie C. Harris. And teaching is what we love to do. Let me tell you a little bit about my beginnings. You see, I am the daughter of a slave girl named Jane. My father was named Julius Walker, and he was actually my mother's slave owner's son. So you see, I too was born a slave. Near the end of the Civil War on a plantation in Harris County, Georgia. I was actually raised by an aunt a few miles down the road in Columbus, Georgia, on a different plantation. And while there, I was able to attend schooling with the slave owners' children. As the Quakers came south during Reconstruction a little bit later, I received additional education. And then as a teenager, I was afforded the opportunity to attend Claflin Normal School in downtown Columbus, Georgia. Now, the Claflin School was built after the Civil War in 1886, specifically to teach Negroes. And that's where it all began, because as a teenager, as a high school senior, I began to teach at the Claflin School part-time. I taught in Georgia for 10 years, and then I did like so many of you. I came to Texas. So in the early 1880s, I came to Corsicana, Texas, and I began to teach there. And I taught in Corsicana, Texas, until I was requested to teach at Dallas Colored School number 1. So I came to Dallas. Now in Dallas, I did a little bit more than just teaching. I met and married my first husband, Frederick Kenneth Chase, and he was an attorney who actually ran for the mayor of Dallas. I also gave birth to my first and my one and only daughter, Frederica Chase. And after a period of time, Mr. Chase passed on, and I remarried again. I married a prominent Dallas physician who was also a minister in the AME church. I was very active in my church, the New Hope Baptist. I was also very active in various civic and social clubs, and I even founded the Ladies Reading Circle. See, teaching is what I love to do. But I was so busy teaching, I did not take the time to write my memoirs or to have my biography written. However, my daughter, Frederica Chase's biography was written, and there you can find additional information about me. You see, my daughter, Frederica, was also an educator, and who later became a social worker. My daughter had lots of accomplishments. In 1913, as a student at Howard University, my daughter was one of the founders of the National Sorority of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated, which was not only had an emphasis on education, but also had an emphasis on political activism. So in that very same year, my daughter, along with other Deltas, actually marched in the Women's Suffragette March for women's rights in Washington, D.C. And back home in 1924, my daughter continued her fight for women's rights and social justice, and she helped to found the Dallas Alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta right here in Dallas. See, my daughter had a lot of accomplishments, but I was also had accomplishments of my own. I was a notable teacher. G.W. Grant in 1912 wrote a book that mentions me. And he said that I was one of many teachers who actually brought light to the chaos in Dallas's school. I was listed with a lot of notables in that book, some that you may know. I am Terrell of Fort Worth, N.W. Harley of Dallas, Julia Caldwell Frazier of Dallas, and me, Franny Chase Harris. Now, I was written in many articles and magazines, but I'm very proud of what G.W. Grant said about me.
Mrs. Fanny Chase Harris of Dallas is another one of the pioneers of Texas who has done much to bring the schools of Texas out of chaos into light. Commencing her work at Corsicana in the days of the organization of the school in that city and giving to that school 5 years of continued service, she changed her field of labor to the city of Dallas, where she has taught more than 20 years in the primary grade of that school. She has been a great teacher, and many Negro children in these two cities have received their first impressions from her. Mrs. Harris, to her credit, perhaps more active service in the schoolroom than any teacher in the list of pioneers of education in Texas. She has 2 states to her credit, and her work in this state alone covers a period of over 30 years. No teacher of the race in the state has been more faithful and more continuous than she has, and none have been more useful to their race.
After 62 years of teaching at the age of 79, in 1932 I retired. And in 1946, at the peaceful age of 93, I moved on to teach in heavenly realms. I'm Fanny C. Harris, a proud teacher of Dallas Colored School number 1.
This is about Blind Lemon. Blind Lemon and I run together for about 18 years around Dallas, Texas. And he was a blind man. I used to lead him around. When him and I would go and big folk would sit down, we'd talk to one another. Oh, baby.
I really appreciate if everybody would keep their silence. And ma'am, you back there with that Kodak brownie camera, would you please put that away? There's absolutely no filming or photography in the museum. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, hello. My name is George Francis Porter. I was born in the state of Georgia on December 17th, 1876. Yeah, that's just over a century after the Revolutionary War, where our nation got its freedom. And coincidentally, just over a decade after the Civil War, where we got out. Yeah, I was raised by my great-grandparents, Robert and Ruth Hunter. And they instilled in me a love for knowledge and education. It would later be my honor to help educate a population that had not far been removed from enslavement. I was blessed to attend Atlanta University and graduated in 1899, class of 1899. Yeah. And then I moved later to Waco, Texas, where I taught for a while at Paul Quinn College. And in 1901, I moved to Dallas to teach at Colored High School. Colored High School, it was originally located on Hall and Cochran, but later moved to its present location right on Root, now named Booker T. Washington High School. Yeah, I got a little comfortable here in Dallas, and I branched out a bit, and I became the president of the Dallas campus of Wiley College, which is located headquartered in Marshall, Texas. So you can see I had a great love and passion for education, knowledge, learning. But it did not blind me to the fact that my people were still being denied their human and civil rights. That's because that to replace slavery, white folk had set up a system, a segregated system of Jim Crow. Why, right in here in Dallas County alone, there were many Negro, black people that were denied the right to serve on juries. Now, how many of you have gone out of your way to avoid jury duty? See a show of hands. I can't see your hand no way, but if I could see your hand, I tell you, shame on you. Shame on you. The jury service is an excellent way to demonstrate your citizenship. It's an excellent way to promote our democracy. So I became convicted that jury service was a right that had to be protected at all costs. That's why I joined the NAACP, because they fought for justice. The NAACP, that was a place where I could help make sure that my people, I was a part of bringing about a positive change in my people. So in 1938, me and the NAACP, we developed a plan that would open the door to jury service for black people right here in Dallas. Now, prior to that time, if you black person received a summons, he or she was expected to excuse himself, never actually serve on the jury. But with the plan that we developed, was we would show up to jury service and demand to be part of the jury, not be disqualified. Now, when I received the summons, I reported to jury service with a few of my other NAACP friends, members. It was the president of the Dallas NAACP was Benjamin Howard. And then there was Reverend Maynard Jackson, who was the pastor of the New Hope Baptist Church. There was Reverend E.C. Estelle, who was the pastor of he was the president of the St. John's Baptist Church. And I was a member of the St. James AME Church. Yeah, and when I got together with my friends, we executed our plan perfectly. And when I received my summons, my colleagues, they accompanied me to the central jury room. When I first got there, the first time, I was dismissed as a juror. Now, the second time I went, I was dismissed again. But on the third time, I showed up and they threw me head first down the courthouse steps. And as you can imagine, this horrible treatment resulted in me sustaining a condition, an injury that caused me to go blind. Yes, sir. Well, the story of my treatment went national, and it angered a lot of people. One such person was Mr. Thurgood Marshall. Yeah, Thurgood Marshall heard what had happened to me, and he was furious. Now, he was working as an attorney for the NAACP in New York City at the time. Right away, he filed a complaint with the United States Justice Department. He let them know that he would be coming to Dallas. Word got out that he would be coming to Dallas to investigate my treatment. Well, the Dallas chief of police heard the news. And he let it be known that Thurgood Marshall would not be welcome here in Dallas. Yeah, but Thurgood was a smart man. This was not the first time he had dealt with power structures and law enforcement in the South here. So before he came to Dallas, he paid a visit to Texas Governor Allred, and he let him know that he would be investigating my treatment and jury suppression right here in Dallas. Well, Governor Allred assigned a Texas Ranger to protect Thurgood Marshall. Yeah. And then you know what? It's a good thing he did. Yeah, because as Thurgood was wrapping up his investigation, as he was leaving the courthouse on his way to his car, that Dallas police chief confronted Thurgood. And that man was so annoyed with the presence of Thurgood Marshall that he pulled his gun on the man and said, "I got you now, you black SOB." And Thurgood ran for his car with the Dallas police chief hot on his heels. And as they got to the car, right there, sitting there on the hood, was the Texas Ranger that the governor had assigned to protect Thurgood. And he pulled his gun and pointed it at that Dallas police chief and said, "Look here, fella, you stay right where you are." Oh, man. Yeah, can you imagine the governor of Texas assigning a protection for a colored lawyer from New York City? Oh, man. Yeah, well, even though I lost my eyesight, a lot of good came out of that whole incident. First thing was that Dallas was embarrassed by all the negative publicity that came out of that whole incident. And they began to open up jewelry service for colored folk all over the county right there. And they did so with encouragement from the Texas governor. He assigned Texas Rangers to oversee all of the jewelry tampering right there in the central jewelry room. So it was a good thing. Another good thing that came out of that was the Dallas NAACP, along with the Texas NAACP, which was headed by A. Maceo Smith, they began to build a great relationship with Mr. Thurgood Marshall. No, they couldn't let him get away. Yeah, this would be the first of many visits that Thurgood would pay to Dallas, and he would help to coordinate civil rights work and civil rights litigation right here in Dallas. And Thurgood won a great many victories here in Dallas, one of which was the Smith versus Allwright decision, which struck down an all-white primaries in the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. And then there was the Sweat versus Painter case, and that struck down the discriminatory practices of the separate but equal law, which in the state of Texas, in the higher education. So, I guess you might ask me if I have any regrets for doing what I did, standing up for justice, since it left me with a permanent disability. Well, the answer to your question is a resounding no. Yeah, even though it cost me a heavy price, my eyesight, it was worth it. It was worth it because I got to see my people get the rights that they were guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. But I do have one favor to ask you. embrace your duty and your opportunity to serve on those jury duties. Yeah, and encourage your family and your friends to do likewise. I thank you.
Lemon, oh baby, he's a blind man.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Marcellus C. Cooper, also known as the first black dentist to practice in Texas. Don't worry if that makes you smile. We don't examine teeth without an appointment. I was born in 1862, a year before slavery ended, 3 years before we found out about it. Those were amazing times of change for blacks across the South. And as you can imagine, I spent much of my childhood working land. I believe that's where I gained my strong work ethic and my belief in the Creator. Caruth Farms, a 30,000-acre formal plantation in North Dallas. The area is known as Uptown to North Park and all the land in between. Yeah, I attended my primary schooling in East Dallas, in the black settlements of an area near White Rock Lake. And then shortly after, moved to Springfield, Missouri, where I lived with my father, and graduated high school. After high school, I returned home with a plan to become a dentist. You see, I didn't believe that there was not opportunity if you were willing to work hard. No one could convince me of it at all. I was very vocal and very set in my manner. So I secured employment at Sanger Brothers department store, where I went from working land to operating elevators. Right this way. I also took the occasional odd jobs as I learned to do more than one thing well. It took me 11 years to accumulate enough money to begin my secondary education. I was 29 years old. I had my mind set on Meharry Medical School in Tennessee. Founded in 1876, Meharry was the first medical school in the South for students with my unique skill set. A fast-paced program full of like-minded, brilliant black men, all pursuing the same fate we would later discover. And even then, mastering the mostly unfamiliar subject matter wasn't the only vision we could muster. After classes and study sessions, we would speak of our dreams, how we intended to uplift our people, leveraging the same tools used to keep us in servitude. Meharry wasn't easy, but after 5 years of intense work, I graduated and moved back to Dallas. Once at home, I immediately went to work on opening my first practice on Commerce Street. I stayed there a short while and then moved to Commerce and Pearl. Forgive me. It's quite a while ago. In an office building that was recently opened by Dr. Benjamin Blewett, the first black surgeon in Dallas. That's okay. I would stay there a short while, and then I would relocate to the Pantheon Temple in 1950, where I settled my practice at 2551 Elm Street. Dr. Blewett, my friend, would go on to open the first Black hospital in Dallas. And just a side note, Dr. Blewett was also a Meharry graduate. As my practice increased, I would come across all sorts of my people. And we made it a point to encourage and support one another. You see, even amidst the racial conflict of the day, we knew that anything was possible given the correct amount of faith. The size of a mustard seed was plenty, and sometimes that was the best we could do. Now, family, yes, I had one of those. In the early 1900s, I married Willie Beal. The union with her produced 4 children. There was Marcellus Jr., Dorothy, Doris Marie, and William. I had 2 older children from a previous marriage, Marzelle and Benny. Marzelle, my daughter, would become Dallas County's first Black juvenile probation officer in 1934. She would also have a building named in her honor. My son William would become an inventor, holding several patents and a Tuskegee Airman. That's what I said. My family and I live near downtown Dallas at 1521 Villa Street. The property is historically marked and remains. On December 19, 1929, at the age of 67, I passed away. My remains are buried at Woodland Cemetery in Dallas, right up here next to Lincoln High School. The MC Cooper Dental Society is named in my honor and was founded in 1934. Cooper Street in South Dallas, also commemorated.
I was so hot on that day, I didn't know what to do. I, Georgia Tarplin Thomas, had been fired from my job where I had worked for 3 years. I worked at Susan Williams Elementary School and had a perfect record. I loved my job as a custodian. It gave me a good income and I could take care of my children and spend some time with them. I got up the next day. When I went to that job that day, the principal, Mr. Smith, met me at the door and told me my services were no longer needed. Well, I asked him why, and he said that he didn't have any problem with me, that I was a good and dependable worker, and that he couldn't do anything about it, and he was sorry. That was my answer. Well, after I put 2 and 2 together, I realized that the superintendent of the school district, Mr. W.T. White, must have had something to do with my being fired. Probably because of the incident and the confrontation that had happened a few weeks before in his office. Well, this situation all started one evening when I was at home cooking dinner, and my daughter, Glenda Ray, was in her room playing. So I asked her, I said, "No, why aren't you doing your homework?" She said she didn't have a book, that it wasn't her day to have a book. I said, "What you mean it's not your day to have a book?" So she explained to me that they didn't have enough books for all the children, so classmates and her would have to share a book, so it wasn't her day to have a book. Well, the next day I got up and went to the school and talked to Miss Walker, her teacher, who confirmed that what Linda Ray had told me was true. Then Miss Walker said that she had an extra book that Linda Ray could use. And I said, no. We need for all the children to be able to have it. So Mrs. Walker told me that I, as a parent, could do more than she could as a teacher in a situation like this. She said that parents can get more done than teachers. Well, I'm really ready to fight now. It has only been a few years before, in 1954, that Brown versus the Board of Education was passed in Topeka, Kansas, giving us, as a people, more educational and equal opportunity for education. But nothing had changed in Dallas, Texas. Mr. W.T. White called out I was a troublemaker. I showed him a troublemaker. So I, along with Mr. Blacklock and a few other parents, all of whom had children in KB Polk School, we decided to pay Mr. W.T. White a visit. Now, we hoped we would have more parents who come, but some people couldn't come because they had to work. Other people couldn't come because, well, they didn't come. And then you had some people who mysteriously and strangely got terribly sick the night before and were unable to go with us to make our demands of Mr. W.T. White. Well, finally, when we arrived at Mr. W.T. White's office, we had our appointment, but we still had to wait a while. I think that all that waiting must have aggravated Mr. Blacklock, because when we went into superintendent's office, Mr. Blacklock, Mr. Superintendent, of course, didn't rise or greet us, and he was just sitting there all distant and calm. Mr. Blacklock came in and he took that textbook and threw it down on that desk. And then he told Mr. Superintendent White, and he told him too, that the colored children were having hand-me-down books that were torn and dirty and soiled and missing pages and marked all through. They had gotten them all from the white school. Well, Superintendent White said he didn't know anything about this practice. He had never heard of that, and he would have to look into it, and then we would dismiss. Now, I have to tell you, we didn't know Blacklock was going to throw that thing on that desk. And we were really worried. We didn't know what was going to happen and how Mr. White was going to take it. That, when Blacklock put that thing on that desk like that, I didn't know we were going to jail. What was going to happen? We went on out, and then we decided that we would make our demands known. That we wanted to have more books, to have enough books, and to have better books for all of the colored children in our school. Well, that was the first fight, and that's how I ended up being unemployed. That's always good. It's all right. The Lord will make a way, surely, always. I had to return to work as a day job, cleaning the homes of wealthy white families who live nearby. But that's all right, because I had to do it, though, because I needed to pay my bills, and I had children to take care of as a single mother who was divorced, but thank God I was able to live with my mother. We lived in a colored community called Ella Vickers, right there on Tyree Street. It was a beautiful house, and my mother loved that house because her father, my grandpa, had built it with his own hands. And she would plant flowers, jonquils and lilies, all beautiful, and they bloomed from the spring all the way to the summer. I guess that's why I love flowers. Yeah, it was a beautiful thing. Well, 1957 came along, and it was time for my daughter, Glenda Ray, to go to junior high school. We all call it middle school. So it was time for her to go, and all the colored children in our community were supposed to go to Washington High School. Nearby was Russ Middle School, which was segregated and only had white and Mexican students. Now, my son Bernard was in grade school, but with Glenda Ray being going time for her to go to junior high school, I didn't want my daughter going to school with nearly grown men and women. She was a young student. They had students at Booker T who were 17, 18, some even 19 years old. So, along with a group of other parents from KB folks, we decided that we would send our child and our children to Russ. It was right in our neighborhood, and we felt that though it had never happened with the 1954 ruling, we should be able to do that. So we got all our supplies and everything together for our children so they could be successful the first day of school. They could be successful all the school year long. Glenda Ray and all the students, even the parents, we were all dressed in our Sunday best. We got to the school. Somebody must have told the administration to come. Because when we got there, see the crowd forming, and then when we got up to the door, the white principal met us. I remember he was a tall, good-looking man. And he said, under no circumstances would he enroll any colored children in his school at any time. And then the white parents and children, and the Mexican parents and children started jeering and gesturing as we returned to our car. I had never been so humiliated or disappointed in my life. Next morning, I got up, packed up my car with my son and my daughter, and I drove to California. Took my daughter Glenda Ray to stay with my sister Dimples in San Diego. There, I knew she would be safe and away from the atrocities and the humiliation of Jim Crow, and she'd get a good education and be able to make something better of herself. Once she was all settled and enrolled in school, I took Bernard and we came on back to Dallas and we finished up with grade school. And then as soon as the 60s came and it was time for Bernard to go to junior high, I packed me and Bernard in the car, closed up the house, and went to live in California. I stayed there with them until they finished school. And I came on back to Tyree Street, right there across from KP Pope. By then, my mother had gone on to glory, and the house was there. The flowers were still blooming. It was a bittersweet thing. I left Bernard and Glenda Ray there in San Diego, and they did well. They come home every now and then for vacations, family occasions, and holidays. So I'm there on Tyree and built a strong PTA. And right down the street from Night Chapel AME, our church, I could walk down there, and that's when we would have good community meetings to strategize about how to make things better for our community and our children. Then after a while, I needed a job. Well, KB Pope was hiring a cook. I could get up and walk right across the street. What a thing. As time went on, the community started to chose to bestow honors on me for my civic work and my community work and my church work and school work. And I was grateful, very thankful. But the most beautiful thing, the KB Pope School built a garden right there in the courtyard, and they named it. That was such a beautiful thing. And so there I was, on Tyree, living in Ella City, thinking and thanking God for all the things He had done for me all through the years. And here we are in the century 2000. I never thought I would live to see a year start with 2. So I retired. My last job was cooking for the Jesuit priest at St. Jesuit Catholic School. And here we are. It's all a wonderful life and a wonderful feeling to be able to work for your community and your children to have a better life. I thank God for it all. And one thing I know, I hope I have been a help to other people. And most important, I hope that I have taught some young person that it only takes one person to make a change in this world. And if I've done that, then my living is not in vain.
We'll be closing in 15 minutes. Please make your way to the main entrance. We will reopen tomorrow at 10 a.m. We thank you for your patronage, and we look forward to seeing you again at our upcoming exhibits and programs. Have a great evening. Thank you, and please come again.
I have lived in this city since 1978. And I was always told by, even today, the younger people that come to the city, that Dallas never had any civil rights issues. And never had any civil rights issues. And I say, well, if they didn't get it and we got accommodated, then what's wrong with that? You know, why do you feel like that you have to ruin your own city to get the civil rights? What's wrong with that? So as I began to study even more so with civil rights history, I then began to learn that these people who were former slaves built and are knowledgeable for things around the world. The oldest Black legal society, the Texas NAACP, the Black Chamber of Commerce. And I am then asking, why is it that when you go to the Civil Rights Museum here in Dallas, you see Rosa Parks and you read about the Black Wall Street, and we had a Black Wall Street here in Dallas. And then you go back and you look at the thing from Virginia and the people there. We had a penny savings bank here in Dallas. Why is it that we didn't know this? And so what I want to do, or what I have been trying to do, is to try to make sure that Dallas themselves have pride in what they have accomplished over the years. And it has been a struggle. But you have done such a great job by putting it in the arts, and it's interesting. I hated history when I was in school, but that's so interesting, and it's so wonderful. And to see Zakari, the descendant of the young man, be so excited to see someone of this. And there are many of us with those same kind of unsung heroes. So I do thank you for contributing to that. I really, truly do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate your comment. I would like to say, and that's so true, and that's really the heart, and I'm going to get to you. That's the heart of what Remembering Black Dallas is trying to, I don't want to say save our history, but at least put it back out there in mainstream And as I said, when I first started, we know about Thurgood Marshall, but did we know about George Porter, who's done in the Georgia Thomas? These people live right here in Dallas. And that's our focus. That's why we're called Remembering Black Dallas. And our motto is, if we don't do it, who will? If not now, when? That's our motto. Anyone else? I can't see it.
That's okay.
It's in my eye. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry, turn to you.
I just wanted to say this was wonderful. I'm a little biased because I know several members up there. But the gentleman here who asked about it going online, George, I think it would be wonderful if you started a list and not let these people get away so they can help you do that.
And I know he can do it.
Yes, sir. Dr. Rowan, you mentioned that there was an all-black fair that you helped bring to Dallas because of the state fair situation. Did that have a name, or was it just called the Black State Fair?
So interestingly enough, Doc Rowan was one of the original investors in the state fair that still exists in Fair Park. But the fair that we talked about in this play was actually a Black-owned and operated fair. It was held in the middle of the State Commerce neighborhood. That was the largest African-American settlement in Dallas. And your question specifically about that fair was?
That fair, did it have a name, or is it?
You know, that's a great question. I don't know if it truly had a name.
Was it in Greeks Park?
It was in the area, I'll have to locate specifically. I think it was close to the Flora area, maybe where the Moreland YMCA somewhere in there, I think.
I'm not
And
sure.
also, you mentioned that Dr. Robert Price's
Robert Prince
Prince
is his grandson. No, I did not mention it.
why? Google mentioned this, and so did Fannie Lee Harris.
Well, I'm not a direct descendant, but since you mentioned it, I would say that Dr. Prince's book,
Yeah.
the history of Dallas from a different perspective, was probably the #1 source of information that I used to construct the story of Dr. Rowan.
And how many know Dr. Prince?
He's
He's probably on the list for our next presentation.
Sure.
I already have another list for next year. Yes, sir. Brother Anderson.
Dr. Cooper, you were about to say something when the music came on. I'm curious what that is going to do.
Well, so that was more of a ad lib, which is why the music came on.
I didn't have anything to do with that.
We're still working on technical issues. This is our first production, so tomorrow night we'll have it down pat.
But to finish the question, the answer, it was something that was going to be aimed directly at generations coming up.
And you get it in tomorrow.
I will get that in.
Well, you mentioned that you did a couple of the scripts for the characters.
I did for D.L. Turner and for Georgia Thomas. The members and some of the actors, we all kind of worked together on that, and some of them perfected it and developed it themselves.
Beautifully done.
Yes, they did a great job. Joanne and then the next person.
Well,
Well,
Dr.
yeah.
Rowan, is any of your children or grandchildren go in business with the same businesses that you had to keep it going?
Oh, you asked me as Dr. Rowan?
Yes.
I think his daughter actually was she opened a clothing store in the same complex with the grocery store and the pharmacy and all of that. So she sold fine hats and those types of things. And she actually worked in essentially the same shopping center as her dad. I think a couple of them may have been involved in the grocery store business, but definitely the next generation. You asked the question about Robert Prince, but not only did he become a medical doctor, but his sister became a PhD. So they were a very distinguished family in the second and third generation.
And, I'm sorry, with you next.
And
Oh,
Mr. Anderson.
I was gonna ask, J.L. Turner, was there any particular case that stood out? You know, any particular project that stood out while he was, being an attorney?
Very interesting question. You know what? I can't say for sure. I'm really not the person who actually does J.L. Turner all the time. It's Selmore will be doing J.L. Turner.
Tomorrow, yeah.
Is that a question that you can answer?
I can answer, yeah. He, like they say, he mostly did land transaction. And when we say that, we talk about large land. Mostly, a lot of it for his families, the Bonner families and the Kellers that lived out near, in the we call it the White Rock area. You know it as the Galleria and what's the other mall? Valley View and the Galleria. I've seen papers where he actually did large amounts of land transaction, and that was his expertise. And as far as civil suits, he did do a case for Dr. Sunday. If you know Dr. Sunday, his son got in trouble, and he did do the lawsuit, work on a lawsuit for Dr. Sunday.
Have you ever run across any information, George, on Dr. Hamilton? I'm told that he was responsible for developing Hamilton Park.
Not the development. They just
They
named it.
They just named it after
They just
him?
named it after him.
Okay.
Yes. He wasn't responsible for it because I really think he had passed away by that time, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken. But he was not here when Hamilton Park. He moved back to Alabama where his family was, I guess.
Okay.
They have a good book on Hamilton Park in the Dallas Library that you might want to look at the whole history of that.
Yeah.
And I'm doing a piece with Samuel Hudson, as I tried to I got you
We
to
talked
run
about it.
the hospital, and he was very instrumental in the city of Dallas forming that area so that the people that live near Love Field, they got moved up there.
Yes, they got displaced.
They got displaced.
But I think they adored him and wanted to honor him because he was one of the few medical doctors in that area. Well, he was really housed, he lived in the Y downtown. I guess that was the place for single men to live in the YMCA. And that's where he lived, but when he became too ill, he left. And I think they just so loved him, they wanted to name it after him. But I don't think he didn't have any part in the development of it, no.
What's your
What
membership?
else?
One more.
One more? Oh, there you go. Yes, ma'am.
Miss Harrison, was that,
I'll
did you
join
say
you.
that she started the
I will.
health chapter?
Her daughter,
Her daughter
her
started
daughter,
this?
Genevieve Chase Dodd, was one of the founders.
Okay.
Do we have any deltas in here?
My daughter's a devil.
Any deltas?
My dad's mom.
Oh, your dad's mom? Okay. Well, Fantasy was the mother of the founder of the Delta.
Member of New Hope Baptist Church.
And member of New Hope, which is you a member of too, as well as Dr. Cooper. And also, what do you think of the pictures? Those
Dr.
actual
Cooper's wife.
pictures? Pardon me?
Dr. Cooper's wife.
Oh, he was not?
He was a member of Bethel AME Church
Oh,
down where Booker T is.
oh yeah. Mhm. Okay.
Near Flora and there. That was his church.
What do you think of the pictures? Those are actual pictures from the J.L. Turner
Fantastic.
family. And that's just a few of them. They have pictures stacked up about this house. I think that's all they did in their spare time was took pictures. But it gave you a good insight on their life, so.
So are those homes still owned by the family?
No, no, those homes are gone. Actually, J.L. Turner's house is right in the service road of the Woodall Rogers Freeway, where the school is. When you pass that school, that's where his house was. Right at the end of where the State Street comes into the service road. His house was right there.
That's uptown.
Pardon me?
That's uptown.
I didn't even,
Is that uptown at that point?
they call it uptown there, yes.
Yeah,
They
and
call
so
it
can I just say,
Yeah.
Dr. Cooper's house.
as a person who was born in Kingston Clinic, that'd be me.
Me too.
Born in Kingston Clinic, and when the first land rush, I call it, in the 80s came and all the speculators came, my husband and I were living on Allen Street in a fourplex that we owned. And so we were forced out. So your question about Uptown and just the conversation, I think it's one of the things that this piece does for me and that I love and that at the same time makes me kind of sorrowful
And the question about are these homes still owned by family members? There are reasons why those homes are not owned by family members, and I think that it's really, I think it's incumbent upon us, those of us who care about this history or know some of this history or don't know it, that we understand some of the reasons why these great land masses, and not only the stories, but the sense of erasure that has happened over time and over years. It's very important, for example, when George says that as an organization, they don't call it Uptown, so that people know that, that it's just like now in the arts world now, people are we do a land acknowledgement so that we say that we know that we are on the land of Native people who were here before, and if we know the names of those people, we said that. We can say the same thing. Most of the arts district of Dallas was Black. There are only 3 institutions that still are there: Booker T, Moreland Branch Y, and St. Paul. But it was Black, and it's important for us to know that story, to know that history, and to continue. And when we lived on Allen Street, I would tell people, well, in 20 years, nobody's going to believe this is a Black neighborhood. Just like nobody can believe that when you say Valley View was Black, they don't believe that. Guess what? In 20 more years, they ain't going to believe South Dallas was Black. We don't do it.